Alright friends, welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about 12 tips that I wish I had when I was starting in Tarkov. They honestly would have made my life so much easier trying to just get my legs in this game. But, you know, we figured them out and now I want to share them with you. So, probably the first and arguably the most important tip is you really need to take a lot of time and effort to learn each of the maps. You don't have to do them all at once. This is a map of customs. The first map that most of the quests send you to. It looks kind of confusing, and honestly it is. But most of that is just, you know, these little pins that are telling you little locations and stuff, and you can hide those. But I highly recommend first thing before you even go into a raid is you find a map like this. I use mapgenie.io, and they have all but Reserve and Lighthouse available for free. And you can, you know, hide all the loot. You can hide everything except like individual types of loot. Like if you just want to see quest objectives, it's really easy to just hide everything and then pop them right up. And then extracts and then spawns too. This is actually really good for our purposes. This is kind of the view you want to start with, I'd say, because you want to learn where you're gonna spawn when you play as your main character. Scavs are a little different, but we're mostly just talking about your first PMC raids. But you need to know where you spawn, and you need to know how you're gonna get out. So when you get into the game, you can double tap O and it'll pull up a timer in the top right and a list of stuff, a list of places with these names in blue or teal, whatever that is. If you play as a scav, the yellow names will pop up, but if you're playing as a PMC, it'll be all the teal names. It'll be specific ones based on where you spawn. So usually with customs, when you spawn over like on the left half of the map, it tells you that you can leave in any of these places on the right half of the map, and if you do spawn on the right, it tells you the ones on the left. So it's really important to know where those places are, because if you don't, then you can't get out of the raid without dying or waiting for it to expire. And if you wait for it to expire, then you lose all your stuff anyways. So it's really important to learn extraction points, and it's very helpful to learn spawn points, because if you know where you spawn, you have a base point to look at this map and figure out how to get where you want to go. So I highly recommend when you go into your first raids, you know, wander around a little bit. Don't be looking straight for loot, straight for fights just yet. See if you can pick out details like I know when you spawn directly next to train tracks, you can know, or if you spawn directly next to train tracks, you can know that you are right here because, okay, that's not exactly accurate. If you're next to train tracks and a river, you can know you spawned right there. If you're next to just train tracks, and this is a power station, this is like a big tower. So if you see train tracks and a big tower, and a bunch of messed up train cars, you know you're kind of in this area. So you got to look for landmarks and figure out how to navigate where you want to go. So yeah, that's kind of like a really big thing. And one other note with extractions is, not only do you need to go to the right ones for you, they're not all available all the time, even when they're on your list. So particularly on this map, ZB12 and Old Gas Station here. They are marked as always, they're not always open. The way you tell if they're open is you go there, and if there's green smoke in front of the old gas station, then you know it's open. And if there's like a searchlight, the ZB12 is a bunker, so and there's a searchlight on top of the bunker. So if you see that searchlight on, that means it's open, like this says. So it's really good to double check and make sure that all of the or that there are no conditions you need to watch out for to prevent you from using the extract. Same with Smuggler's Boat. It's just like a rock by a river, and the only way you can tell it's open is if there's a campfire lit by that rock. But then again, there are some that are always open, like Crossroads is always open, Trailer Park is always open, ZB11 is always open. So they generally give you a lot of options, and it's just how convenient or inconvenient those options are. And it's good to know. It's good to look into these things beforehand. The other one to look out for in this map is the vehicle extract. VX is vehicle extract. If you see a black SUV at this gate, there's like a little tiny gate here, and that's the car actually marked on the ground on the map. If you see that there, you can pay 5,000 rubles, which you have to be carrying on your person. And that car will take you out. You have to wait 1 minute, whereas other extracts you wait like 7 seconds. But if you wait that 1 minute, you get to get out without having to go anywhere else. There are some other bonuses with vehicle extracts, but that's kind of for another video. This is just basic stuff we're talking about today. The next things I want to talk about are guns and ammo and the difference in the role of the two. So in Call of Duty, you know, you have like an AR, does a certain amount of damage per bullet. With fire rate, it's got its own stats, and then you got an AK with its own separate stats, and you know, one AK is identical to the next, and you know, that's just how it is. In Tarkov, it's quite a bit different. Any gun that's chambered in 7.62 by 39, this is the caliber right here in the bottom left, and this is the name in the top right. Any 7.62 by 39 gun will do the same damage per bullet. Because it's not the gun that dictates the damage, it's the type of bullet that you're firing. So, what that means is what you're firing out of the gun makes way more difference for damage than the gun you're firing it from. So if we look in here, we can see we have all these kinds of ammo. This is 545 by 39 BP. This is 545 by 39 PP. And they both have different stats. This has 890 meters per second bullet velocity. This has 886. Failure to feed chance. We'll talk about those in a little bit. You know, different stats here. So these two rounds, even though they're the same caliber, will do different damage, both to body parts and through different kinds of armor. And it's really important to learn the difference between them, because that's how you win fights. Because a lot of people just shove as much armor on their bodies as they can, and you need to get through that if you want to kill them. The main role that the specific gun you're using plays is the specific attachments you're using and the kind of the way you handle the gun. So like here we have an AKM, a VPO 136 or a VEPR, and an SKS. They all fire 7.62 by 39. The AKM and the VPO are almost identical. They can both use pretty much the same modifications. But the key difference is that the AKM has it can either fire single fire or full auto, whereas the VEPR can only be single fire. I think this VEPR also has slightly more recoil. But then again, when you're going to buy an AKM from a vendor, the AKM is more expensive. So, you know, there are like trade-offs even between really similar guns like this. And then there's the SKS, which is, these are AKs, they're like assault rifles. This is a SKS, which is basically a DMR or a mid to long range sniper rifle. It's a small sniper rifle, basically. Semi-auto. You click once, it fires once, no full auto capable. It runs really well with a scope, and you can get a lot of kills at like 100 to 200 meters with it pretty easily. It's a very solid gun, but it's way different than you know, running around with an AKM and being able to go full auto and close range and stuff like that. So there's a lot of considerations to make, and the only real way to figure out where each one works best for you is to just, you know, use them, try them out, see what you like, experiment, and figure out what you can make happen with what and how you like things. So that was the important difference between ammo and guns for point number 2. Tip number 2 is how you can find which ammo is good and which ammo is bad. There's no way to really tell in the game. If you look at the tooltips, it's like muzzle velocity, feed chance, heat, recoil, accuracy. They don't actually tell you the numbers, but if you're using your PC to look it up, you can use the wiki, and if you just search ammunition in here, you can get to this page. This is all the different types of ammo in the game, and if you pick a caliber, which we're talking about AKs and 7.62x39, so we'll look at that. You'll find which guns use it, and a table of all of the ammo types for that caliber. And on this nice table with all this super in-depth information that we don't really care about. The only stuff we do care about is the type itself, and then the damage that it does, and then the penetration power. So the importance of damage is this is the amount of damage this bullet will do if it hits an unarmored part of the body, or if the bullet penetrates the armor on that part of the body. It's important to note that anything above 35 will one-shot a head, and anything above, I believe, 85 will one-shot a chest. So if you shoot a player in the chest who has no chest armor, they will die with 7.62x39 HP. The arguably more important thing, like damage is important, but once you hit those breakpoints, it kind of, like 35 versus 46 doesn't matter too much unless you're like pounding rounds into someone's chest. In which case, if that's what you're doing, penetration power is even more important. This dictates how much armor this bullet can go through. So with armor, each piece of armor has an armor class. Most of the cheap stuff you get from vendors is either class 2 or 3. The stuff you find relatively common is class 4. Like this tube top is 3, this chest is 4, this helmet is 3, that one's 3. This chest is 4, you know, you learn which one's which just by looking at them enough times. And each 10 points of penetration power in this table is one class of armor. So we know that PS, this is the most common 7.62x39 round, has 32 penetration power, which means it'll like 90+% of the time it'll go through class 3 armor. So if we're running around and we see a dude in this chest piece or this helmet or the Blueberry UN helmet, and we hit him with, you know, SKS with PS ammo, if we hit him in the head, they're gonna die because it's gonna go right through the armor. Now if we see a dude in class 5 or 6 armor, which 6 is the highest, then we're not gonna be able to do very much to him at all until we break that armor and hit, which means hitting it a bunch of times, which is not ideal. So in that case, we would want to be carrying around MAI AP, but that's like the top stuff, and it's very hard to find, and you know, that's not quite as common as this stuff. But using the right ammo in the right situations will very much make or break your fights. And if you don't want to look it up on your computer while you're playing, there's an app. I believe it's on both Google Play and the App Store, called the Tarkov Battle Buddy, and it has nice readouts of all of the ammunition stats and many other things, but I use it mostly for ammunition. You can look at all of the types. I can't really show it to you on stream, it won't look very good here, or on video it won't look very good here, but look up Tarkov Battle Buddy and scroll through the ammunition section, and it'll tell you the pen chance, it'll tell you the armor, or it'll tell you the penetration value, the damage value, and you know, all those other fun bits of information in that table. So yeah, very important if you want to get into the habit of figuring out which one's good, which ammo's good, and which one's bad. Every time you get buried in ammo and you're selling it, just look up, you don't even have to look up all of them, just look up some of them. A couple of the ones you're selling and see if they're good. If they're not, it's no big deal, you'll find more. But it happens very often that you start getting buried in ammo, and like my ammo case is full here. I got more spilling out, and so I do need to sell some, and I know most of this is pretty basic stuff, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 is to avoid gear fear. It's something that all of us do. We all worry about it. no matter how much I say this, it's going to happen, but it's good to try not to let it happen. And that's not to be afraid to lose your gear. It's going to happen. You're going to lose it all anyways. But the nice thing is, you're going to find more. Whether you lose it or not, you'll find more. But at some point, it's going to be gone anyways. So you may as well make use of it and see if you can have a good run because of it. So like I've got this super nice helmet that I looted off a dead guy that I killed. It's got a face shield, it's got ear armor, it's relatively high class, it's good. I've had this gun for like forever, since the start of the wipe. It's got a lot of attachments on it, and you know, it's very bougie, it's suppressed and everything. I've got a couple other guns down here like that. Like, they're good stuff, but they've been gathering dust in my stash. I haven't been using them, so they're useless. I may as well not have them if I don't use them, but I'm afraid to lose them. And that's the problem. So the less afraid you are to lose your gear, the more useful your gear will be, because you'll actually make use of it. It's kind of recursive to say that, but I think it makes sense if you think about it. So yeah, it's hard to avoid, but make sure you use your gear. Don't be afraid to throw that stuff on. Try and be a Chad, you know. You get that class 4 armor. You throw that stuff on and you go. You do the best you can. Because even if you do lose it, like I said, you'll find more. Next, for tip number 5, it's important to talk about the case. Your secure case. If you start with the $40 edition of the game, then you start with what's called an alpha case. It's 2x2, so you have 4 spots. If you buy the Edge of Darkness edition, it gives you a gamma case to start out with, which is 3x3, as you can see. But what's so special about this case is you can't lose it or anything in it. So this is the exception to the rule when you lose all your stuff after dying in a raid. This is the stuff you don't lose. So it's very important that you know what to put in here and, you know, how to manage it properly. So basically what I do is I try not to leave much empty. I do leave one empty because I like to have an open spot. If I find like a Bitcoin or something small and valuable, I can just throw it in there without having to reconfigure. But when I don't have anything valuable, I like to throw as many medicines as possible into the case because I really dislike running out of medicine. And if I keep refilling my rig with meds every raid and I die every raid and then I lose them, then I have to go buy more and it's like a big hassle. So I like to keep as many meds as possible in my my case. A lot of people call this the butt. So I like to keep as many meds as possible in my butt, just because they're nice and safe in there. And you know, if we find something big and valuable, like I found this lion statue a while ago, these are really good and really annoying to find, and you need several of them. So I found that in raid, and I said, okay, well, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't mind if I lose these things, and we can move this, and then we can, you know, if I can find the space in my stash. And then, you know, we can just throw this in here. And I did die that raid. So if I hadn't done this, I would have lost my lion. And that would have been probably the saddest thing that happened all day that day. But it's important to know, like, have your own priority figured out of what you care about in there and what you're just storing in there because it's convenient to not lose when you die, you know? For tip number 6, we're going to move away from, you know, game-specific information, and we're going to talk about settings a little bit, specifically the settings of PostFX. If your computer can handle it, I highly recommend turning them on. But what those are is, you know, you got your normal settings. There's texture quality, shadow quality, all that. But in addition, Tarkov lets you have a lot of control over the colors of the world. So if you enable PostFX, you can adjust brightness, saturation, clarity, colorfulness, a bunch of other stuff. I don't use color grading. I haven't really played with it. But these are all things you can really play with, and all they really do is mess with, you know, the colors, you know, PostFX. They don't change what you see, they change how you see it. And for a long time, I played with these off. and it makes the game very muddy, and it becomes very hard to pick out targets very far away because everything's kind of washed in the same color wherever you go. But if you enable these, you can use these exact settings, and it's at least a decent starting point to play with. You can adjust from this, you know, little by little, until you get it to where you want it to. But at the very least, if your computer can handle it, I recommend doing these settings. And if you want, you can pause it and make yours match, or if not, you know, that's cool too. But I recommend at least checking it out. Tip number 7 is another setting, and that's VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, the speaking thing. If you go to sound, by default, this will be disabled. It's just so that when you start playing, if you haven't played in forever, you don't hear someone talk and get really confused. If you're going to hear someone talk, you're going to have to opt into it. So you can do that there. Pick your mic device and then your volume, which mine's the wrong one. So it's good we did this. So make sure you enable that if you want to talk to other players. I think you can speak to them within 20 meters. So you have to get pretty close, but it's a fun feature, and it makes a lot of changes to the game. It enables you to do some things that are otherwise borderline impossible. It makes them very much more accessible. Tip number 8 is basically 2 specific keybinds you want to look at and make sure you know, or change to something that works for you, and that's push to talk. For VoIP, if you turn that on, is by default it's U, which on a standard QWERTY US keyboard, that is miles away from the movement keys. So I changed mine to equals, which is actually further, but I use an MMO mouse with 12 buttons on the side, so I can just push it with my thumb. You can have a hotkey to enable or disable VoIP, or enable and disable VoIP. On the fly, if someone's spamming or saying obscene things, you can just go ahead and turn that off with the push of a button. The other really important one is, where did it go? This one, discard. By default, discard is set to the delete key, which isn't too hard to hit. It's like if you swing your hand to the other side of the keyboard from movement, hit the arrow keys and move up. It's the key on the bottom left of that little, you know, section of keys, provided you have those keys. But either way, it is less than convenient. So I recommend changing that to something that is a bit more accessible. I use tilde because it's like right next to WASD. It's the key directly under escape. It's very convenient, and when you're in a raid and you're trying to loot stuff very quickly, it helps a lot to be able to, like, you know, just push that button and throw it out of your pocket like that. I'm not going to destroy my mags because I'm going to use them one day. Probably when I'm done with this video. So the YEET button, the discard button, the VoIP button, the push to talk button, all of that is important for tip number 8. Tip number 9 is checking ammo and clearing jams. A good habit to get into, at least when you do scav raids, which we're not going to talk specifically about those, but in general, when you do scav raids or after you get into fights with your PMC raids, it's good to check your magazine, which you can do by pressing Alt-T at the same time. Also, that's not a very convenient keybind, but you rarely push it in times of stress, so it's not that big of a deal. But basically, your character, you push Alt-T and your character will tip the gun to the side, take the mag out, look at it, and it'll tell you in the bottom right, it'll say like nearly full, less than half, full. It'll tell you a general idea of how much ammo is in there, unless you have really good mags, in which case it will tell you exactly how much is in there. But you usually have to put some effort into finding mags that'll do that. So Another thing that happens that you should know about is that there's a chance for your guns to jam whenever you fire them. It's very small. I've played probably 100 hours in this update, and I've jammed 3 times. So it doesn't happen often. Guns have durability, and scav guns that you start with on scav runs are by default about half durability. But the higher your durability, the less likely they are. When jams do happen, it's generally a failure to eject. I believe that's the only malfunction in the game right now. But the way you clear that is pressing Shift T, because what Shift T does in a normal circumstances, your character will check the they'll check the chamber. That's the word. See it. You'll be able to see if there's a bullet in there. So when your gun jams, usually it's because the shell failed to eject. So you press the same button again, Shift T, and your character will open the chamber and eject the shell manually. And then you can go right back to firing. It's very difficult to remember to do that in the heat of the moment. But there's like a little warning that plays now. It wasn't like that before. Your gun would stop firing. But with this update, they added a warning sound and a little flash that your gun has jammed. So you can know to clear the jam. So Shift T for jam clearing and chamber checking, and Alt T for checking the status of the magazine. Okay, so for tip number 10, we're going to talk a little bit more about ammo and reloading. So for when you're preparing for a raid and giving yourself gear, chances are you want your gun, and the bullets in the magazine that you have in the gun is what you start with. That's good. But chances are you want more than that. So you want to bring more mags. Here's the thing. Your character can't really reload his mags from the backpack because, if we think of it in terms of realism, it's really inconvenient to like reach back here to, find a mag past all your loot and, try and shove it in your gun in the heat of battle. So you have to use what's called your tactical rig slot and your pockets. Pockets naturally are small, so they really only fit pistol mags. So you have to put your rifle mags in your tactical rig. Now there are one of 2 ways that you can reload a gun. You can either press R to slow reload, or press R twice. You double tap R for a fast reload. The difference is if you slow reload, then your character will try and keep your magazine on him. If you fast reload, your character will just yeet the mag out of the gun, drop it on the ground, and pull one out of the rig and shove it into the gun, and then start firing again. So fast reload is quite a bit faster if you don't mind losing your ammo, your magazine that you had in originally. So that's, if you don't mind it, it's not such a bad idea to do, especially if you're still in the firefight. But if you don't want to lose your mag and things are kind of calm and you're just refilling your weapon after you shot half of the mag at like an AI scavenger or something, then you probably don't want to lose the mag, because you could refill it, you could put it back in the gun later and fire the rest of the bullets. So if you want to do that, it's important that you keep 1 mag's worth of space open, because again, realism, think about how you reload a gun. You take the magazine out, you put the magazine away, you take the new one out, and you put that in. So if your character has a full tactical rig, when you take the magazine out and try and put it in, there's no room, you'll just drop it and then take a new one out and put it in. So you'll have an empty space in your thing and you'll be short your mag that you had in originally. So this is just a cheap tactical rig that you can get from a vendor very easily. Most rigs are quite a bit bigger than that. That has enough room for 5 mags, 6 if you're maxing out. And that has quite a room for a bunch of pistol mags and stuff. More stuff, there's all sorts of tactical rigs. This one's pretty limiting, but most raids I don't even get through 3 mags anyways. So having 3 extra is oftentimes quite a lot. 2 extra is often more than enough as well. Like if you're single tapping and careful with how you use your ammo, generally it's 3 is okay. 3 being 1 in the gun to start and 2 extra. If you're worried, then you can bring in a 4th mag. That's fine and not excessive at all. But it's up to you, again, as many things are. Experiment, play around, see what you like, and go from there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for tip number 10. Tip number 11 is meds, grenades, and their hotkeys. So it's kind of in a similar vein. If you want to use hotkeys to access things like grenades or medicine, this is a healing item, a basic healing item, medkit. You can use them from your inventory. Like if I was missing health, I could right click this and hit use, and it would use it on whatever body part is lowest or needs it the most. But that's kind of a hassle again in combat. Opening your inventory, right clicking the right thing, hitting the use button, which is kind of tiny. It can be difficult. So they have a system where you can assign anything in your pockets or rig a hotkey if it's usable. You can't do it with mags because that would just be kind of pointless. So your pistol takes hotkey number 1. Your first rifle is number 2. Your second rifle is number 3. And then so the fresh assignable things are 4 through 0. You can kind of see them down by my face. To set the hotkey, you just press the number key on whatever you want to have set to that. So long as it's in your pockets or your rig, it'll just do it. And then you go into raid and hit that button, you'll pull out that thing. You can do that with medicine, grenades, food, drinks. There's another thing I was thinking of. Oh yeah, pistols. If they fit in your rig, you can assign a pistol a hotkey as well. And even if you have another pistol on 1, you can still pull this pistol out with, you know, the 6, just by doing that. So, you know, there's some room to play with that little system a little bit, and it's just good to know that that's there, you know. So that was tip number 11. We're on to the 12th and final tip, and that is the bag. So you will want to bring a backpack on almost every single PMC raid you do. There's very little reason not to. But the thing is, bags are quite large, as you can see. They take up a lot of space. So you would, if you didn't want that space taken up, you'd have to buy them as you need them, which is also quite expensive. Especially when everyone and their mother is carrying a bag around Tarkov. So there's one cheeky little strat you can do, and that is the bag. So here we have this massive chungus, and inside we have this slightly less massive chungus, and inside we have this slightly less massive chungus, and it goes down a couple layers, and then this slightly less massive bag. Not really chungus anymore, it's just a big bag. Then, you know, this kind of average size bag, and then that small bag, and then we have those smaller bags into these really small bags. And there are bags that go even smaller than that, but I don't like to keep them. So I think we have like 20 or 30 levels of bags in the bag, but it's very good to start keeping that. Just so you have something to fall back on every time you need one. So I actually have an empty bag here that I've been meaning to store. So we go down to a level where we want to store it, take all of the further down bags and put them in the empty one, and then put the new right where the old was. And voila. Now that day pack is there with the other day pack into the next scav backpack, into the MBSs, and then the duffel bags further down. And voila, another level has been added to the bag. So that's my 12 tips for Tarkov beginners. There's some basic stuff in there that I think will really help if you just think about it. The maps, just a quick recap: learn the maps, pay attention, take effort to learn landmarks and exfils, guns and ammo. Usually what you're firing out of the gun matters far more than what you're firing it from. To look up ammo stats, you can just go to the wiki or use the Battle Buddy app on the Google Play or Google Play or App Store. Tip number 4, avoid gear fear. Don't be afraid to use that stuff, because otherwise, if you don't use it, it's useless. Tip number 5, manage your butt. Make sure you use it effectively, be it for meds or storing valuables like keys and things like that. Keys are very important in this game. I didn't really talk about that, but just know keys are important as well. 6, PostFX. Play with those. You can go back and pause on that part of the video if you really want to if you want to copy mine, just so you have something to start with. Tip number 7, activating VoIP is a very good thing because it lets you cooperate with players, and if players are talking, you can hear where they are if you're trying to hunt them. So it's a bit of a competitive disadvantage to not have it on, and you have to enable that manually in the settings. Number 8, the hotkeys for the discard button and the push to talk button with VoIP. It's important to set those to something easily reachable. Number 9, use Alt-T to check your ammo remaining in the mag of your gun. Or if you have a jam, you can press Shift-T to clear it. Number 10 is there are slow reloads, fast reloads, and you'll only keep the mag in your gun if you have space remaining in your rig. That was tip number 10. Tip number 11 was the hotkey system with grenades and meds and pistols. As long as they're in your pockets and pockets and rig, you can set any hotkey from 4 to 0 on them. And you can do that in raid or out of raid. It's either or. And tip number 12, the bag. Bags go in bags to no end. So, I hope it helps. If it doesn't, or if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment or come see me when I stream live every weekday from noon Eastern US time to at least 4 p.m. Eastern US time, though many times I go later. I'm happy to answer questions at any point. Or you can join my Discord or Twitter, or my DMs are open like everywhere, and they're all the links are in the description below. And yeah, like I said, I hope you enjoyed. I hope it helps. If you did enjoy and you have not already, I would really appreciate it if you dab on that like button, yeet that subscribe button, and turn notifications on, and come see me in another video. Yeet.